Yes. Now coming to cancellation and suspension of registration. So how the registration is cancelled and under what circumstances can it be suspended? Suspended means for the time being, cancellation means complete. So let's see. First we'll see section 29 1 and 2, circumstances where registration is liable to be cancelled. You have to just remember these circumstances. So first one is circumstance where the registration can be cancelled either suo motu by the proper officer or on application of the registered person or his legal heirs. Okay, in case of death of the person. So if the registered person has died and his legal heirs do not want to continue the business, they can go for cancellation, right? Or it can be cancelled suo motu. Suo motu means on his own by the proper officer also. So what are the circumstances? Business discontinued. No business, no registration. You have to cancel your registration. Transferred fully for any reason including death of the proprietor. Like we had discussed this point many times before, that if I completely sell off my business to you as a going concern, fully sold off, then I'll have to cancel my registration. You have to obtain a fresh registration. Then amalgamated with another legal entity, amalgamation, demerger, or disposed of, or change in the constitution of business, change in constitution of business which requires new PAN number in income tax. If you are required to have a new PAN, like your old partnership firm has changed completely, ABC were the partners, now all of them have retired and new partners have come in PQR. So that will be considered as separate assessee in income tax. So it will require a separate PAN. So if PAN number is required to change, then you have to get a new registration in GST also. So the old firm's registration will be cancelled and new firm will have to take a new registration. Or the taxable person other than voluntary registered person who is no longer required or liable to be registered under 22 or 24, means if his turnover falls below the threshold limits. So if your turnover falls below the threshold limit, then you are not required to register. So if you are already registered, you can go and cancel your registration. But if you have taken voluntary registration, means voluntary registration which does not require any threshold limit, it can be you can take voluntary registration with any turnover. So in that case, that will continue, then you cannot cancel it. But if it was taken because of threshold limit, you had crossed the threshold limit, so you took registration, and maybe a few years down the line, if your turnover dips because of recession or setback in business, then you can go and cancel your registration. Provided that during pendency of the proceedings relating to cancellation of registration filed by the registered person, the registration may be suspended for such period and in such manner as may be prescribed. So you have made an application for cancellation and the case is pending. So till the time the case is pending, I mean to say the application is pending, your registration will be suspended. Then circumstances when the proper officer can cancel registration on his own, that is suo motu. In the following cases, the registration can be cancelled by the proper officer from such date, including retrospective date as he may deem fit. So here are the circumstances where officer can cancel your registration, and he can do so with a retrospective effect also. Means he will pass an order that your registration is cancelled since 6 months before. So what are these cases? Let's see. Following contraventions defined in Rule 21 done by the registered person. So first is he does not conduct any business from the declared place of business. So you have given the registered address as a plot number so and so, building number so and so, street number so and so, and if the officer comes there to visit you anytime and he doesn't find you there, no place of business is located in that place, then he can go back and cancel your registration. Number one. no business is conducted from the declared place of business. Number 2, he issues invoice or a bill without supply of goods or services in violation of provisions of this act or the rules made thereunder. Means you haven't supplied the goods and services, there is no supply of goods and services, but you issue invoice. So why would somebody do this? To pass on credit. Like say for example, I have supplied the goods to some other person in cash, so I know I don't need to give him an invoice now. And even if I give an invoice to him, he will not be able to take any credit because he's a consumer. Consumers don't get credit. So if I give an invoice to the consumer, he's not going to get credit. So I tell him that okay, I'll give you discount of 2%, don't take the bill. He agrees. Now instead, for those goods which I have supplied to Mr. Shri, I will issue the bill to another person who is entitled to take credit, means to another supplier. So goods supplied to Mr. Shri and the bill given to Mr. Om, because Mr. Om can take credit. So if we are caught doing this, then our registration can be cancelled. So this is a big fraud which happens, the ITC fraud, input tax credit fraud. Then if he violates the provisions of section 171 of GST Act, this is anti-profiteering. Suppose if the government reduces the rates of tax or grants some exemption, then you have to pass on the benefit to the consumer. And if you don't pass on the benefit to the consumer and you keep the benefit with yourself, that is called as profiteering. So if you are caught profiteering at the expense of consumers by not passing on the benefit of reduction of rate, your registration can be cancelled. And other penalties are also there. Then second point, a person paying tax under section 10. Now these 2-3 points are very important. Separate question can also come. MCQ question can also come here. A person paying tax under section 10 means composition levy has not furnished returns for 3 consecutive tax periods. So if you are covered by composition scheme, you are paying composition tax and you don't furnish your returns for 3 consecutive tax periods. Consecutive means 1, 2, 3 joint periods. 3 consecutive periods, then your registration will be cancelled. Secondly, a registered person other than composition levy means who is paying tax under normal scheme has not furnished returns for a continuous period of 6 months. So for composition dealer it is 3 tax periods. Now here tax period for composition dealers is normally quarter wise, means 3 quarters you can say. So for 3 quarters you haven't submitted the returns. And for normal people who are paying tax under section 9, the normal charging section, then 6 continuous months. 6 months. So if you don't file your returns for 6 months, then your registration can be cancelled by the officer. So these timings have to be remembered for short question, MCQ based questions. And D point says any person who has taken voluntary registration under subsection 3 of 25 has not commenced business within 6 months from the date of registration. So if you take a voluntary registration, then you have to commence business within next 6 months if you haven't already commenced. If your business is already commenced, then it's fine. But if it is yet to commence, you have to commence it within 6 months. And if you don't commence within 6 months, then your registration will be cancelled. And lastly, registration has been obtained by means of fraud, willful misstatement or suppression of facts. Means the initial registration which you have taken is by means of fraud. You have done a lot of fraud, you have given false documents and so on and so forth. Fraud or willful misstatement, the documents that you have submitted are wrong, or you haven't furnished relevant facts. Suppression of facts means hiding the facts. So either you have hidden the facts, or you have given misstatements, or you have done any kind of fraud, means false intent was there in registration, then your registration will be cancelled. So these are the 5 points you have to remember. Okay, and provided that this whole 5 points A, B, C, D, E, a very important theory question can come. Either the whole question can come, what are the circumstances in which the officer can cancel your registration on his own, full question, 5-6 marks question, or any one of these points can be covered by an MCQ question. Then, provided that the proper officer shall not cancel the registration without giving the person an opportunity of being heard. That is a simple point. It is called as principle of natural justice. Giving an opportunity of being heard. So principles of natural justice are always required to be followed. And provided further that during pendency of the proceedings relating to cancellation filed by the registered person, the registration may be suspended. So suspension is done during the course of proceedings. So first it will be suspended, and after final inquiry and everything, it will be cancelled. Then procedure for cancellation is also given. A registered person seeking cancellation shall electronically submit an application for cancellation in the prescribed form within 30 days of occurrence of the event warranting cancellation. So event warranting cancellation means like closure of business, death of the person, and so on and so forth. So from that day, within 30 days, you can make an application in the prescribed form. He is required to furnish in the application the details of inputs held in stock. So when we make an application for cancellation, we have to also give a stock statement, okay? Because we are required to reverse the credit. We had seen this point in ITC. Whatever stock remains with us, we have to reverse the credits, okay? Whatever credit we have taken, we have to pay it back. So for that purpose, you have to give details of inputs held in stock, or inputs contained in the semi-finished or finished goods held in stock, and also the capital goods held in stock on the date from which the cancellation of registration is sought. Liability thereon means how much reversal is required. There also you have to calculate and show it there. Details of payment, how you have paid that amount, if any, made against such liability, and may furnish relevant documents thereof. Then suspension is also given Rule 21A, that where the registered person has applied for cancellation under Rule 20, the registration, there should be a T here, the registration shall be deemed to be suspended from the date of submission of application or the date from which the cancellation is sought, whichever is later, pending the completion of proceeding for cancellation of registration under Rule 22. So the purpose of suspension is simple. Cancellation will take time. Suppose the investigation will take another 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. You never know. But if your registration continues, then all the liabilities will continue. You have to file your returns, you have to pay taxes, and so on and so forth, because you are still a registered person. So therefore, this point of suspension is there, that if you make an application for cancellation, then your registration will be deemed to be suspended from that day. Or if you seek that please cancel my registration from so and so date, then suspension will operate from such date for further period for which the proceedings continue with the officer. Similarly, second point says that where the officer has reasons to believe that registration is liable to be cancelled under section 29, what we saw just now, or Rule 21, he may, after affording the person a reasonable opportunity of being heard, suspend the registration with effect from a date to be determined by him, pending the completion of proceedings of cancellation. So he will start two things. He will start the proceeding for cancellation also. He will give you a show cause notice for that, and at the same time he will suspend your registration. Then the registered person whose registration has been suspended under sub rule 1 or 2 shall not make any taxable supply. So your business will hamper, will not make any taxable supply during the period of suspension, and shall not be required to furnish any return under 39. obviously you will not be required to furnish returns under section 39, the final returns. And the suspension under 1 and 2 shall be deemed to be revoked upon cancellation of proceedings by proper officer under Rule 22, and such revocation shall be effective from the date on which the suspension had come into effect. Revocation of suspension will happen when the proceedings result in non-cancellation. Means if the officer finds that you are not required to cancel your registration will continue. So the suspension will be revoked from the day it was granted. And if it results in cancellation of registration, then suspension has nothing to do, because then it will lead to final death. So suspension is like coma and cancellation is death. So if coma leads to death, then obviously there will be no coma. But if a person revives from coma, then he is alive. So that is suspension. Then where the person who has submitted the application for cancellation is no longer liable to be registered, proper officer shall issue the order of cancellation within 30 days from the date of submission of application for cancellation. So this is the first case where the assessee applies for cancellation, then it has to be decided within 30 days. And where the proper officer cancels the registration suo motu, he shall not cancel the same without giving a show cause notice and without an opportunity of being heard to the registered person. The reply to show cause notice has to be submitted within 7 days of service of notice. So if the officer wants to cancel your registration, then first he has to give you a show cause notice. Show cause means show cause why your registration should not be cancelled. Right? And you have to submit your reply within 7 days of the service, means of receipt of notice. Service means the receipt of notice. So when you receive notice, the show cause notice, you have to file your reply within next 7 days. Provided that where the person, instead of replying to the show cause notice for contravention of provisions of B or C of subsection 2 of 29, that is non-filing of returns. Non-filing of returns. So if this was the default, you are a composition dealer and you have not submitted your returns for 3 tax periods, right? Means 3 quarters. Or if you are a normal dealer and you haven't filed your returns for 6 consecutive months, then it leads to cancellation. So when you receive a notice for cancellation, what you can do is, instead of filing a reply, you can submit the returns. Simple now. Why to reply? Just go and submit your returns. And if you submit your returns, then the cancellation will be stopped. It will abate. Or you can say drop the proceeding. The officer will drop the proceedings and pass an order. What order? That your registration continues. So it says furnishes all the pending returns. So instead of giving a reply, what you can do is go and submit the returns. Finish. Then if reply to show cause notice is satisfactory, this is a normal case where some allegations were put against you, like contravention of law, and you file your reply and the officer finds those replies satisfactory. The proper officer shall drop the proceedings and pass an order in prescribed form. And where registration of a person is liable to be cancelled, officer shall issue the order of cancellation within 30 days from the date of reply to show cause notice. So 2 things are there. If your answer is satisfactory, he will drop the proceedings, and if it is not satisfactory, then the officer will go for cancellation. So that he has to do within 30 days from reply of show cause notice. And the cancellation shall be effective from the date to be determined by the officer. He will direct the taxable person to pay arrears of tax, if any, interest or penalty, including the amount liable to be paid under 29(5). that is the assessment order. So all the taxes due will be recovered from the person, including interest and penalty. Simple. And then the reversal of credit, again given, that is stock reversal. Whatever stock is there, the credit has to be reversed. So that is given there, that a registered person whose registration is cancelled will have to do. So this is 29.5 which is referred here, 29.5. A registered person whose registration is cancelled will have to debit the electronic credit or cash ledger. So debit the electronic credit ledger means pay. You have to pay that much amount. Input tax credit in respect of stock of inputs or inputs contained in semi-finished or finished goods stock or capital goods or plant and machinery on the day immediately preceding the date of cancellation, or the output tax payable on such goods, whichever is higher, calculated in such manner as may be prescribed. Simple. So whatever input tax credit you have taken, and since you are cancelling your registration, so whatever stock is there is deemed to be transferred also. So we'll calculate the output tax, normal output tax on the sale price if you have sold off those goods, and either the credit part or the tax part, whichever is higher, will have to be paid. All simple points. And then revocation of cancellation is also there. Revocation of cancellation. So after getting cancelled, it can be revoked. Means a dead person can be brought back to life. So in which cases, let's see, where a registration of a person is cancelled suo motu by the officer, such registered person may apply for revocation of cancellation within 30 days from the date of service of the order of cancellation at the GST common portal. So you have to make an application within 30 days on common portal. However, in case the registration was cancelled for failure of a registered person to furnish returns, before applying for revocation, he has to submit those returns. So first you have to submit your old returns, and then you can make an application for revocation. So it says person has to make good the defaults by filing all pending returns, making payments, etc. Then if the officer is satisfied that there are sufficient grounds for revocation, he may revoke the cancellation by an order within 30 days of receipt of application and communicate the same to the applicant, obviously. So if he feels that the revocation should be granted, then he will grant it. Otherwise, he may reject the revocation application. However, before rejecting, a show cause notice has to be given to the applicant, and within 7 days he can make a clarification, to furnish clarification within 7 days of service of the notice. The officer shall dispose of the application within 30 days of receipt of clarification. So first we'll give a show cause notice. Again, principles of natural justice. Due regards must be given to opportunity of being heard. Then revocation of cancellation under SGST or UTGST Act, as the case may be, shall be deemed to be revocation under this Act also, because we have to make parity between all the laws. So if the state government revokes your cancellation, then central government has also deemed to have revoked. Then all returns due for the period from the date of order of cancellation till the date of revocation of cancellation shall be furnished. Now see, if your registration was cancelled and later on it is revived, so you must not have filed your returns in between this period. So now you have to file them within 30 days of revocation. And where the registration has been cancelled with retrospective effect, the registered person shall furnish all returns relating to the period from the effective date of cancellation till the date of order of revocation of cancellation within a period of 30 days. So again, if it was backdated cancellation, then you have to submit returns right from the date of cancellation till the date of revocation. And then at the last, a list of forms is given. This is for reference only. not to be mucked up. Right? So that was a simple first chapter of the procedural part, registration of person under GST.